My grandfather and my father built the Granada, they built the Empire in Mansfield and the Hippodrome. The company was C.H. Hill and Sons. They had a big building yard on Victoria Street, and he built Cox's Lake, most of Woodhouse, and most of the estates in Mansfield. He built cinemas. He just did all the building, really. So really a building family.
As you went in, you'd go up the steps into the foyer, which was very big. There was the ticket place on, as I remember, on the right-hand side, and on the left-hand side was the kiosk with all the sweets and things in.
I think it was Miss Candy, the sweet shop, as a man say, refreshment shop, and that was open to the public from the street as well as from the theatre.
And then there were 2 or 3 more steps. There were steps either side going up, but there was then steps into the main cinema, and there were 2 usherettes there.
And the ticket, the man on the top of the steps, or the girl, whoever's shift it was, we just tore it and you went in with the other half.
There was a cigarette machine, there was a Coke machine.
I always remember the Coke machine. It was a real treat to buy a Coke. It was really cold, and you put your money in it and the Coke bottle came down.
And then on the right-hand side, there were some steps to go up to the restaurant. But on the left-hand side, there was a huge staircase that took you up to the foyer and into the restaurant and into the circle.
I think there were 3 aisles that you could walk down, so depending which aisle you were on, or the usherette was going to take you to, depending which door you went to. And they'd take you to your seat, and that was it. Smoking in those days, of course. So you could actually see the film, the light of the film, being projected onto the screen through the smoke. Not allowed nowadays, of course.
I would say that the seats were red plush, with the organist down at the front, and the usherettes showed you to your seat. And it wasn't like now where you get there for the start of the film. You could walk in at any time, halfway through a film. You could stay when the film finished and watch it through again if you wanted to. And the ladies came round with the ice cream trays around their necks, and it was such a treat to have a little tub of ice cream when I was taken with my parents.
Ron Burkitt, he was the chief of staff, he was the commissioner, and what he used to do every night, just before, they used to have what they call staff parade, which was just before we opened, and he'd line them all up against the wall, all the usherettes, and he'd be looking at the uniforms, seeing if like being on parade, seeing if everything's all right. And then they go to their respective places. The manager and the secretary would come out. We would wait in the middle foyer. He sort of just stood there, you see, he got a uniform on. And then he'd come out of the office, which was lower down, you see, they'd come up the steps and say that if there was anything to say or anything like that, But they called it parade.
When the cinema were due to open on, say Monday or whenever, say the first showing was 1 o'clock, at 1:45 there'd be what they called the parade. They'd stand on the foyer and the manager would check the uniform that everything was okay, because they were on the sharp end of the job and facing the public, weren't they?
You knew it were coming. You got your navy blue trousers, a yellowy, goldy coloured satin shirt and a cape, navy blue cape with No, just to make sure you all look presentable. And,
it was the Cecil and Sidney Bernstein that owned the Granada, and they were really professional at doing everything, really, and they wanted the Granada to be the best in everything they did.
It was a grand theatre. There was no 2 ways about it. It was wonderful. Compared to, we had the Empire cinema, which was in Mansfield also, at the top of Stockwell Gate, and the Grand Cinema. But the Granada was also the grandest of the 3. It was superb. I mean, the seats were luxury, the place was beautiful, the restaurant was beautiful, it was kept well. It was lovely. The whole thing was very nice.
There were 6 cinemas in Mansfield, so you got a choice. I never went in Rock on Skerrill, I never went in Ritz at Bull Farm, I went in all others. Hippodrome, which turned into Century, Grand, Granada and Empire. I mean, it was cheap enough then, you could sit there and it throw you out, you could sit there and see it again. You got a girlfriend, you didn't want to go home early, did you?
I started there as an apprentice in 1958, and it was a job that I thoroughly enjoyed. I was fascinated as regards the cinema because I used to go there as the children's matinee. And I thought, well, when I leave school, I want to go up in that projection room and see how the whole thing works. And that's what I did. I got the job at the Granada, and I was just 15 when I left school, so I got the job then. There was a chief, 2 second operators, 2 third operators, a 4th operator, and then an apprentice, roughly speaking. Alf Bailey was the chief. Nice guy, very nice guy, yeah. And he was due to retire around about that time, and 2 years into the job he did retire, and then Ken Roby took the job over, who was a younger man who worked at the Century, which was owned by the Granada in Mansfield, or the Hippodrome as it used to be called.
Came back to Mansfield in 1958, and there was no jobs then. And because I'd worked at the Granada previously, and my cousin worked there at the time, she must have told Mr. Bush that I had come back into town, and so he asked me to go in and see him. So I went in, and he said, you know, I can offer you a job, which would you like, as long as it's the bottom end, which was the pay box or the kiosk or something. I said, I don't know really. So he said, well, you've done the pay box last time you were here. What about the kiosk? I says, OK, I'll take that.
I started there as an usherette. And then over time, I did various jobs there. I went in the cash box occasionally. I used to go round with the ice cream around the auditorium and upstairs into the circle with the tray in front of me selling the ice cream and drinks. Mainly, I was an usherette, and we used to grab our torches after getting changed and then go into the stalls downstairs and then get started on the work. All we had to do was, when the customers came in, we just had to seat them.
Well, when I first started, it was Bridge on the River Kwai, and then there was quite a few musicals were shown there, Pal Joey, South Pacific, Gigi, and they were on for quite some time, probably 2 months at a time. But there were a variety of films. Usually it was a feature film and a second feature, and it was continuous performance, so you could go in at 1 o'clock, and if you wanted to, you could stop there till 10:30. The feature was shown 18 times a week, from Monday to Saturday.
The uniforms that they give us to wear was quite bizarre, really. Well, I thought there was. We wore dark blue trousers, and we had a gold long-sleeved blouse buttoned up to the neck. Then we had a cape that was fastened around the neck, and that's our uniform, and that's what we had to wear. We also had a hat as well. I'd forgotten about that. It was just like a sailor hat. Then over the time, as the years went by, they introduced the new uniform, which was a navy blue skirt and a navy blue jacket, which was buttoned up to the chest, and that was it.
So I started just with the sweets and cigarettes, and then they started doing the booking for films. We booked for, probably not in this order, we booked for 10 Commandments, every seat, 1,523 seats in the Granada. Every seat was booked for a month, not necessarily occupied, but we had the tickets, so they did as a makeshift booking office at back of the kiosk, which was my department, all these little cubby holes, and it went down very well.
Well, there's 2 projectors. There was a blank of on the back wall, the amplifiers, and there was 2,000 feet of film on each spool. Well, they needed a changeover between that and the next projector, which you couldn't see inside. What you look for was a dot in the right-hand corner when this spool was about to run out. Start the projector up and then swip it over with the sound, and you wouldn't know inside that had happened. Then that would be running 20 minutes, 2,000 feet. You'd thread the projector up, the first one, and then change over again. You got to do that about 5 times in a feature film. You'd switch the arc lamp on, get the film running through the projector, and look, and you'd see it hit the screen. It looked like a mile away.
We used to go, and they had really nice films, like all the Rodgers and Hammerstein, like King and I, and they were They seem to be...
We had our first date there.
Yes. Oh, did you?
Lady in the Tramp.
Yes. Yeah, and the Walt Disney
we were 15.
ones. Did you go in the back row?
I don't know, but what it was in those days, the cinema, you had like 1 and 6s at the front and 2 and 9s at the back. I can't remember the thing.
Whatever the price was.
But we used to buy the cheapest tickets because inside you had a friend who was an usherette, and he used to go in, show her the 1 and 6. Oh yeah, you instead of pointing that way near the screen, she'd point us at the back.
Well, I was working at the Soldo at Kirkby in Ashfield, and I was. I found out they gave me a fortnight's notice for redundancy. They were closing it down, and I went just happened to go to the Granada, and I asked if there was any vacancies available, and the chief Ken Roby was on the foyer at the time, and he says, "Just a minute, I'll speak to Mr. Dawson." So he goes into the office and comes back out. And he says, "We'd like to have a word with you." So anyway, I went in and he interviewed me, and I got the job straight away. And the Soldo closed on the Saturday, as I actually started at the Granada on the Sunday.
It was the wow factor in cinema terms, because it did have a restaurant cafe upstairs, which was very unusual for a cinema them days. I discovered that if you were a guest of someone that worked at the Granada, they actually had on the ticket machine a concessionary ticket that came out. And one of the ladies working there was friendly with our group and Jimmy Shade. And I went to go to the cinema, and she said, "Oh, it's you," and etc., and clinked down on the register. And outshot this concessionary ticket. And I thought, crikey, how many concessionary tickets would they issue? And so I got a freebie into the Granada. Lovely.
We did very well at the Granada. We used to have queues queuing right round the side, right round to the back when we'd got good films on.
And there was a big sign over there saying, "Sorry about the queue, folks, but it's well worth waiting for."
I do remember we had a film called The Robe. It was so busy, it was unbelievable. Everybody just couldn't get in to see it.
Psycho. I did go and see it. It was an X-rated. The thing was, it was splashed all on the front of the Granada that you could not go in mid, because of course when you went to the cinema you could go in at any time, and of course when it finished they always played the national anthem and you all stood up and sang God Save the Queen. But for Psycho you could not go in. If the light was on, you were not allowed to go in. And I know for Psycho, they wouldn't let you go in halfway through because, of course, the big scene was the shower scene and everything, of course, and then the end of it. And I was so impressed that you couldn't go in, and I wasn't very keen on X-rated films. But I did go in there and fright myself to death, well, with a friend and everything.
It's supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, even though the sound of it is something quite atrocious. If you say it loud enough, you'll always sound precocious. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
Mary Poppins. Well, I couldn't believe the crowd that you came to see that film. I mean, well, that was one of the first films that I shown there. And to put it a word, the place was heaving. There were children all over the place. And in fact, the manager at the time, Roger Kelly, he actually took a song from that and he put it on a slide called Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. And what he did, he put it, and the kids on a Saturday morning matinee, which we used to have from 9 o'clock on a Saturday, he used to get birthdays on stage, and he'd get them singing this song. And we'd have a feature, a cartoon, a serial, and this sing-song. One particular day, trainee, it was on the slide line, and we got 3 slides to that particular song. And there's on the slide line, and there's a carrier which you push across and pull across to get different verses. Anyway, he put 1 on, and then in the second carrier he put 3. And then he put 2 in this first one. Anyway, it threw everything out. And Roger Kelly went absolutely spare.
She's supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. 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 Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
Well, there was a Saturday morning club, the Grenadiers it was called, or the Grenadiers. It was a kids' club on a Saturday morning. And a lot of kids were going on their own. They were a bit older than we were. But Dad took me down there. We used to walk down you could walk it from our house on Forest Road. And that was great fun. We used to get there, I think it was 9 o'clock we got there, and we came out about 11. And you always got some kind of prize or present or whatever, and the manager used to come out onto the stage and he used to throw sweets out, and he had a great big bucket of sweets and chocolate bars and what have you, and threw them out, but we were never sitting, certainly I wasn't ever sitting close enough to catch him.
Ken Roby, who was the chief projectionist there at the Granada, he turned around and said, "You play the organ, don't you?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Would you like to play for the children's matinee?" So we've got a new assistant manager who's well into theatrical productions, and he wants to put a stage show on for the kids. And that's how it all started. You know, I think the first song we played for the kids' matinee was The Happy Wanderer. And then the Mansfield Grenadiers was the final singing out tune, as you might say, play out tune.
On the Saturday morning, they used to always bring the organ up, you know, and all the words used to appear on a screen, and we all used to sing along with those sort of things, as well as the skipping competitions and what have you. You used to sing the song every Saturday morning. You used to sing the song. We're all for one and one for all, the Mansfield Grenadiers. That's where I run out of words, but you get the drift.
And then they used to sing the song, the Mansfield Grenadiers.
Oh, gosh, yeah, the Mansfield Grenadiers
Yeah,
song.
they used to sing that every Saturday.
Can you remember it?
Mansfield Grenadiers. That was it.
Had many an adventure with that, because sometimes you'd sit on the organ seat and somebody put an ice cream on the seat and you hadn't noticed it, so that was quite a thing. But one of the biggest hazards, I mean, in today's health and safety, you wouldn't be allowed to do it, or they wouldn't let you do it. Ladybrook, the stream, ran underneath the cinema into Mansfield and into the Mourne. And it ran underneath the stage and where the organ chambers were, because the organ pipes, sounds, were under the stage with shutters to control the volume. They were in either side of the organ under the stage. But I used to go round in the dark while the serial was on, and the kids were watching that. I used to go round the back, down a little metal ladder, to switch the main isolator on for the blowers. But because Ladybrook was there, it used to fill up, and you used to have about a foot of water in the bottom of the organ chambers. So sometimes if you miscalculated the amount of steps, you also got a wet foot as you went down. But you got 1 foot in the water and one on the main isolator switch, and never thought about it. Today you couldn't do that, but so I used to go around there. So many a time I could have ice cream on my trousers and a wet sock as well while I played.
We got guitar players together, Ray McMahon and Carlo Cosinoga, and Stuart Moore was the singer. And Stuart was a go-getting lad. I think he approached the manager at the Granada in the very early 60s, and he said, would he like to hear a teenage band that had just starting up and we could play between the children's matinees? And he agreed. So we caught the tramways buses, as we used to call them days, into Mansfield, carrying 2 guitars. I carried a snare drum in, I think it was an old Royal Navy haversack with a stand and a little Ajax cymbal. That's all we had. But we did have the secret weapon of a Hohner echo chamber that made the guitars sound just like the Shadows. And we waited in the dressing room, ready for the interval when they sold ice creams, etc. And the children were quite rowdy them days, but it was full. So they came to see the serial and the Three Stooges and the main film. And we waited in the dressing room, and in the dressing room was a visitor's book with any of the people that had been performing them. And he said, "Come on, boys, in you come." We set up with the 2 amplifiers, echo chamber, 2 guitars, and me with the cymbal and snare drum, and we did 2 or 3 songs, which went down ever so well. And then we got off, and the film continued. And afterwards, Fred would, him and perhaps somebody else, a projectionist, have sat in the front row and said, "Right, lads, well, you need to get a better drum kit than that." Well, yes. And said, "Yeah, very promising." And he gave us half a crown.
We did sometimes on stage competitions, and then we'd have a young band or a young singer go and sing on stage. But we did one. We had so many up and dress up as a mummy, of the Egyptian mummy. And we got grief from the supervisors. And it used to be the cleaning ladies used to stay on after they cleaned the theatre in the morning to supervise the kids, because there wasn't a toilet roll left in any of the toilets at the end, because the kids were wrapping themselves up in the aisles, in the seats, on the stage. So we didn't go down very well that day, but never mind. But it was nice days, you could go in there, and we had perks like it was a miners' rally, it finished, and parade used to come after we finished our shows. So we used to go on the roof of the restaurant and watch the miners' rally coming down Westgate, and that was an experience.
The funniest bit was if you got a sloppy bit in the movie. They're generally black and white movies, of course. Occasionally you got a colour. That was a real luxury of a colour movie. But the black and white ones, and then when there was a love scene, and what we call the sloppy bits, everybody would be going, get on with it, because we want to see like Tarzan, and Lex Barker did a lot of stuff. I think he was Tarzan at one time.
The death knell for the kids' matinees, mind you, was ITV putting children's programmes on, because it was very handy. Parents would drop the kids off at the bus stop outside the cinema, put the kids into the matinee, and they used to go do the shopping. And we started off with, I think, about 65 going in when we started the first show. For most of the time, we were getting over 600 in, which was, and we did 2 Christmas shows. We did have to open the balcony. The cinema held just under 1,200, and we had to open the balcony for that. And so it was great fun, that was. But then, when ITV started the children's programming, that was, I think, February time in 73, the numbers dropped down. We dropped the last couple of weeks or so, it was down to about 80. But in its heyday, it was a cracking time.
Another thing about the Granada, of course, it had a lovely restaurant upstairs, and I also used to remember it because they had artificial jellies and blancmanges and things like that on display, and you could get a meal up there quite reasonably, and I suppose you consider it at the time to be a bit posh, I nearly got through out of there. They used to do a lunchtime special meal. I think it was 2 and 9 pence then, or something like that. And I was at the college on Chesterfield Road, and I decided I could go there for lunch. And I got 2 and 9pence, so I poddled in, had my lunch, and the girls gave me the soup. Would you like a roll with that? Yes, please. And my bill duly arrived for 2 and 10pence, because they charged me a penny for the roll, and I just didn't have the money. I blustered. But they let me off in the end, so that was quite good.
When I was just, I think, 14, I went down to get a job as a waitress and in the restaurant. And it was a very well-run place. It was a very renowned place. People would go for afternoon tea, which, of course, is very popular now. But in those days, it was proper afternoon tea because, the cake plates and the ladies that would come in for afternoon tea. But I worked all shifts, and particularly when there were shows on, it was always busy. The kitchen was always busy. There were a lot of waitresses, and we all we wore a uniform. And it's amazing. When I'm thinking about it now, and I smile about it, because I would think, when I went in there, I was thinking, oh my goodness, what have I come to? And I think about that in relation to waitressing and people waiting on now in coffee bars and cafes. It was so different. We were regimented, really, and there was a head waitress that oversaw everything we did, and the way we served. But it was great. It was lovely, and I loved it. And the one thing about it was there was a huge window above the front of the Granada, where you would go up the steps to go into the cinema, and also up to the restaurant. Up the stairs, overlooking Westgate, there was a huge window with tables in the window. And, of course, lots of people loved to get the table in the window. And it always felt so grand. It was lovely. It really was.
They wore the black dresses and the little white aprons, and always extremely clean. You never saw anybody with a dirty apron, and the little frilly caps with the black ribbons on. It was an event to go there.
It was.
It seemed, you were being really, if you were taken there, by your mum and dad on a Saturday afternoon, when if you'd been shopping, you went there, you felt really posh.
All the businessmen used to go there for the dinners. Oh, yeah. We used to go and it was a cafe just off the restaurant, and we used to go and have our meals, chips and beans and whatever, in there, and cups of coffee. It was open as a coffee restaurant as well, but the main business people in Mansfield, they were regularly dining in the dining area in the restaurant.
It was a place to go and eat, because there weren't very many places in Mansfield you could eat at the time, not really. There was a Swan Hotel, of course, and I think there was a Clark's Cafe, and Jackson Axe, and of course there was a fish shop at the side of the Granada, which was very popular at the time, but not really many places you could go and have a lunch or something like that, or afternoon tea, say, and it was quite good to go there.
Oh, well, my friend Austin, he was the second chef. On my break, I used to go in regularly for chips and beans. And when I used to go in, he'd shove a sausage underneath when chef wasn't looking. And it cost 1 and 8pence in old money. 1 shilling and 8pence.
I used to watch Austin make the Yorkshire puddings in a big bowl. When you go in and order your food, we used to order our own in the kitchen, you see, and wait for it. And I saw him putting a spot of vinegar in. I said, "What are you doing with that?" He says, "That makes your Yorkshire puddings crispy."
Oh, my old man's a dustman. He wears the dustman's hat. He wears gold-blimey trousers, and he lives in the council flat. He looks a proper nana in his great big hobnail boots. He's got such a job to pull them up, but he calls them daisy roots.
And, of course, they had the big live shows as well, which, was quite unusual at the time. I saw Lonnie Donegan there, and Mr. Dawson said to me, I got seats right on the front row. And Mr. Dawson came down at the interval and said, "Would you like to meet Lonnie Donegan?" Oh, would I? I mean, he was my absolute hero. And so he took me, and we actually walked up the side of the stage, on those steps to the side of the stage, to get backstage. And I met Lonnie Donegan. I was pretty well tongue-tied and all the rest of it. Anyway, when I finished, I thought I better leave, let them get ready. Don't outstay my welcome. So I left them and went to rejoin the audience via the stage, And I got there, and there was somebody on stage. I think it was John Pertwee sitting on a stool. I said, well, I can't go on the stage now and down by the steps. I'll have to go out the crash door. So I did. And I hit the crash door, stepped outside, and all I heard was, "It's him!" Because in my younger days, I had a passing resemblance to Lonnie Donegan, you know. Gosh, it took me 20 minutes to get back to the front of the cinema to get back inside, and I lost a shirt sleeve in the process. Yeah, I really got mobbed. So I know what it's like to be mobbed as a pop star, although I never became one. So that was quite an interesting experience, I can tell you.
And then we started doing the live shows, which were from Granada Television, so they were able to offer them one-night stands moving about the country, and also Johnny Hamp could offer them television. So then that became more bookings, 2 shows, and the seats were 3 and 6, 5 and 6, and 7 and 6. That was the price of the tickets. So we did the booking. By this time, we had the shop. So I had 3 other assistants. 4 of us did shifts, 2 shifts, so it wasn't just me. And so we had to see to the stars when they came in, or whatever advice or whatever it took. And of course we had to do the bookings for the programs, the sales, everything. It was very busy.
Everybody's doing a brand new dance now. Come on, baby, do the locomotion. I know you get to like it if you give it a chance now. Come on, baby, do the locomotion. My little baby sister can do it with me. It's easier than learning your ABC. So come on, do the locomotion with me.
Well, that was just a sideline, really. I mean, the films were still. We're still on Saturday was the busiest day. There was the kids' matinee from 9 in the morning till lunchtime on the Saturdays, and then we just had a quick break, and then we had to go down and get the curtains open, wind the screen up out of the way, push the speakers back, and get all the drapes, the scenery bit at the back of the stage, and then ready for the shows starting. They used to come in a coach. The stars come in a coach. Around about 11:30 lunchtime, the first thing they used to say was, "Where's the restaurant? We're starving." So they all went up and had a meal on the restaurant. While the guys that came with them had got all the microphones and all the rest, they set all that up themselves. And so ready for 5 o'clock for the first show on Saturday. And then, of course, when the shows, there were 2 shows, one at 5, one at 8, and then at 10:30 at night, we had to get all this, the stars went on the bus, on the coach, and we've got to put the screen back, wind the lights up out the way, and get the speakers back ready for the Sunday showing at tea time on a Sunday. So it were full whack at weekends on them shows.
When the doors opened, it was mostly a kiosk then, because the shop would probably be closed. It didn't do the hours all the time. So right at front of me, I would have the 200 packs open of 10 Park Drives, because I knew very well they was going to come in for 10 Park Drives and a box of matches. As far as sweets, I really can't remember.
The shows mainly was on a Saturday. And what we would do, we used to go to the work at normal time, 10:30, and we go, all of us, and we go, first of all, we'd fly the screen, which means that we go on stage and there was a big ratchet, and we ratchet the screen up into the flyers, what we call the flyers. And at the back, on the back wall, there was an alcove, and we used to push the speakers into the alcove and just lodge them, secure them, and then we covered them with a silk backcloth with music notes on, which, basically just a screen. And then what we'd do then is I'd go up onto the roof into a little hatch, and there was a lighting bar then what we had to do, we had to wind them. There was 2 handles, and we had to wind it down. And Ken Roby would be stood in the stalls looking up, because there was like, you could see there was like a grill where you could see into the stalls. Ken would be looking up, and he'd be lowering it down. He'd be saying, right, lower, 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 stop. And then what I'd do then is just secure the bar with chains to stop it dropping, and that'd be positioned for the show, you know, for the night show. And then at the end of the night, we'd stay behind after the artist finished, and we'd put everything back. We'd go up onto the roof, I would go up, wind the thing back up, bring the speakers back onto position, lower the screen. But the trouble is, I mean, I'm not going to say which group, but one particular group, they were messing about. They were just sitting about, talking and strumming, playing, just strumming, playing anything. And I remember Ken Roby saying, "Ain't you lot got an home to go to?" And this was about 3 o'clock in the morning. As he said, we've got to get back in a bit, for show, afternoon film. Billy Fury. He'd sit behind just messing about instead of packing the gear and going.
You leave me halfway to paradise, so near yet so far away.
I just found him very good looking, and I liked all his songs, and I got posters of him all over my bedroom walls, and I got his autograph. Yeah, I actually got his autograph, yeah. He came outside the Granada, and we went to him and just clustered round him to get his autograph. We used to call it the Granada Yard. Yeah, you could cut through from Westgate to Stockwell Gate through the Granada Yard. I never understood why girls screamed until Billy Fury came on stage, and like it all bubbles up inside and you just want to scream. Just lovely, I thought. English Elvis, wasn't it? Yeah, it was our English Elvis.
Listen here, look at me, tell me what do you see without a word of a lie, before you wave me goodbye, you're gonna say I'm a moody guy.
62 was the best year of any year for Shane Fenton and Fentosa, because we started the year with the Billy Fury tour, which lasted 3 months. That was with Larry Pons, and that got us very well known. It was a 3 months tour. I think it was the longest tour ever undertaken up to that time. Mostly 7 nights a week. It was strictly limited to about 10 minutes, 3 numbers, 4 numbers, more or less same set. But I do remember when we played at Mansfield, we begged the stage manager if we could do an extra number. He wilted and said OK. But the stage manager, he was strict on timekeeping. Don't go over, don't dare play another number if a sharp more, that kind of thing. Yeah, we went down well at Mansfield, I can say that. I think after the show, we went round to Clifton Place, just talked about it, and then had to be on the road again the following day.
The Beatles came with Helen Shapiro. They'd only just released Love Me Do. And don't ask me how I got to know about the Beatles, but I obviously really liked them, and I was potty on them after that. I had all the albums. I didn't buy Rubber Soul because by then I was a mod and wasn't interested in them. Because although people think the Beatles are iconic, actually for the youngsters like me, we outgrew them, and they were all, you wrinkled your nose up if you admitted that you liked the Beatles after 1965. So on this particular day, Helen Shapiro was there and the Beatles were in the dressing room. And the dressing room, it was like a tiny window. I never got inside the dressing room because I wasn't pretty enough or naughty enough to actually go inside the dressing room. And we said, Paul, give us your autograph. We bunged this paper through this little window that had bars on it. They were like vertical bars. When we got the paperback, it was pushed back to me. So we only ever sort of said, Paul, give us your autograph, and Beatles, give us your autographs. But we didn't actually see him, all them. But anyway, he bunged this paper through, Paul McCartney, I presume it was, because it got on the paper, piss off, Paul McCartney. And then there was other bits of paper with all the autographs on. And we went, oh, look at this one. And then this girl snatched it out of my hand. So sadly, I never get to keep that one. But I did get the autographs.
I'll always be true. So please, love me do. Love me do. Yeah, love me do.
And I remembered thinking, oh, they sound awful. You know, I'm sorry. But it did. Helen Shapiro was on the same bill, or they were on the same bill as her. She was able to close the first show, but she wasn't able to close the second show because she was too young to be on the stage at that time. So the Beatles closed it.
The Beatles wanted to go for a drink, and I said, well, there's a pub across the road. I said, why don't we go? Fortunately for me and the other two, it was our break time, so off we toddled. Myself and a couple more of the usherettes, we went over to the Eclipse pub, which was opposite the Granada, and we sat and had a drink with them. And it was magic. They was absolutely lovely guys. And we sat there chit-chatting, you know, and having a laugh and a joke with them. And I was sat outside of Paul, and he was grabbing my hand, making nice jokes and everything. It was just absolutely amazing. They were joking all the time. They were lovely, but they wasn't as famous then as what they are now. And I will always remember that. I did get the autographs, but unfortunately they got lost.
Loads of screaming. If somebody popular came to the door, you know, somebody well known, they didn't. They were squealing inside picture plays. You know, when they come on stage, you could hear them from stage door squealing. It was a bit erratic, really.
How could I dance with another?
We always screamed a lot.
Screamed at everyone.
We screamed at anyone. You know, Duffy Powers, the devil's Duffy Powers. We'd scream at anybody. So, but the stage was very small, and the backing group was usually somebody that was like the John Barry Seven. Then the singer would come on. So the Beatles, perfectly honest, can't remember.
I can remember them coming on and Paul McCartney trying to take over the show and showing off a lot.
The one I do remember is they just got Please Please Me into the charts. They'd had Love Me Do, and you could tell there was something. I mean, John Lennon was giving it some with the audience, and he was full of it, you know. And they were raw, if you like, but they were very impressive.
Sometimes, you know, the door would open and it would just be one of the roadies or somebody coming out, and you'd ask them, you know, to pass things in and get things out. You know, there'd always be somebody coming in and out, and occasionally somebody would be invited in.
Oh, their autograph was stacked up everywhere in the, backstage. And so whether they all got signed or not, I've no idea.
We used to stand in foyer at Granada. If any girls used to pretend we were one at bands. We never stood a chance. I remember a girl, I can't remember when I said, just go out of Brunt school, went bands on, and just run around, roll the skates up. So they got mini skates on and wait for bands at back, see if they could click.
I was walking through the Granada yard with my school friends, and there's a lot of girls clustered around somebody getting his autograph. And I said, who's that scruffy-looking yobbo? She just looked, a bit hair a mess and clothes not very smart. And they said it was Ringo Starr, and I said, never heard of him. But because all the girls were getting his autograph, I thought, well, I may as well get his autograph as well. Not dreaming he would be so famous one day. And then when he did become famous, my brother stole the autograph that I got and sold it.
The Rolling Stones were on because a friend was with me, and she tried to speak to Mick Jagger and he stamped on her foot.
Certainly Cliff Richard, I got Cliff's autograph, and he was just starting off then, really.
Come on, pretty baby, let's move it and groove it. Well, shake, oh baby, shake, oh honey, please don't lose it. The rhythm that gets into your heart and soul. Let me tell you, baby, it's called rock and roll.
There was Ellen Shapiro on a show, and she couldn't appear on the second show, being the top star on the last of the show, because she was underage, so she had to appear on the first act on the second show, because of the time limit for her age group. But I certainly remember that, and Bob Monkhouse, he was compere on one of the shows. In fact, I missed him on the spotlight. And he just stepped back in the spotlight and like that with his finger just to move him back, you know what I mean? It looked like he'd been staged, but it was just my mistake. I missed him.
When there were shows on, we would all fight to try and get in there to do a shift that was later, because the stars would come up for tea and things like that. Perhaps those that felt they were more important would stay, and the tea always went down backstage. But it was, I met through that way, I met Billy Fury, and I met Matt Monro, who I went on to be a huge fan of his music. I loved Matt Monro.
So, of course, when we had the live shows, that's where the young girls used to come, up in the coffee bar, because they thought there was a chance. And when Cliff Richard came, they were all ordering milk, because they said that's what he drunk, and that's what he used to get.
They just don't know what's going to replace it. Ballads and calypsos that were nothing on. Real country music that just drives along. Honey, move it. Hey, move it.
Clarence Frogman Henry, Big D. Airwin, and there was a girl called Susie Cole sung the female part there. I don't know who she was, I never heard of her since. Saw Sandy Shaw, and she had a group called Paramounts back there. And I did hear they become Procolarum.
If you ever leave me, I'll be sad and blue. Don't you ever leave me, I'm so in love with you. The birds in the sky would be sad and lonely if they knew that I lost my one and only. They'd be sad if you're bad to me.
My favourite gig was probably the Billy J. Kramer show, because we did actually, they used to go down to the, they used to stay at the Swan Hotel if they were rich, and we did go down to the Swan Hotel sometimes and see if we could see them after they'd done the show. And that was Billy J. Kramer, and my best friend Pam loved Billy J. Kramer, so it was extra special because it was a real heartthrob. There was Billy J. Kramer and Tommy Rowe and the Foremost and the Dennisons. They were sort of Liverpool groups, and I think that was my favourite show.
There was one particular time when me and Mick Fowler was on the spotlight in this second room on the big, what we call Big Bertha, where these girls came running in. We got Paul Jones' show running, and they came running into the projection room and they were shouting, "We want Paul, we want Paul." I said, "You won't get him up here." I says, "The only way you'll get him is by going out this door, climbing up some railings on the side of the building, going along the top, and there's about a 50-foot drop." Anyway, they just went, and I never heard any more about them. What they'd actually done, they come down the side of the passageway from the West Gate, down to the left of the building, where there's some fencing, where the boiler house is. They climbed over the fence, come up the side staircase into the projection room, and that's where they found us.
Well, the Shadows, they were appearing at the Granada, and we went up towards Titchfield Park, and we recognised 3 people in front of us, and Hank Marvin and Bruce Welsh. They'd got a football with them, and they played football in Titchfield Park while we pretended not to be bothered by looking. and we just hid behind trees, and everybody else who'd recognise them there just sort of tried to act normal, but were looking at the shadows playing out in a sunny day.
Yeah, Little Richard had on. Actually, he had Sam Cooke on. Sounds Incorporated, they were the backing group, I remember. And we always had a compare, and then Jet Harris, and then Little Richard.
My friend Mount went, he saw that show, and Little Richard collapsed on stage. He had to carry him off.
I got a girl named Sue. She knows just what to do. She rock to the east, she rock to the west, but she's the gal that I love best. To the booty, oh Rudy. To the booty, oh Rudy. Ooh, to the booty, oh Rudy. To the booty, oh Rudy. To the booty, oh Rudy. Oh, wop, bop-a-loo, bop-a-lum, bop.
I can't remember much about those other than we went to see Chris Montez, and I think he was wearing red carpet slippers, and I couldn't get past the fact that somebody was wearing slippers, you know, at a show. So it's little things like that. And Adam Faith stepping off the bus, and somebody said, "Oh, isn't he little?" And he got back on the bus and wouldn't get off again. He was very upset about that. Obviously very conscious about his height.
Not forgetting the Sunday night shows with up-and-coming local artists that was there on a Sunday night, just to have an half an hour spot between films.
Sunday nights was a cheap night where boys and girls would go to meet. They'd have a B-movies, which was a bit cheaper to go in, and all the young teenagers would go there to meet and kiss and cuddle in the back row and all that. So that's where you got the musical acts. I remember vaguely musical acts coming on at the interval and singing, you know, local talent.
The beginning of the lineup for the Fentones was Jack Wilcox on lead guitar, William Bonney on bass, Mickey on rhythm guitar, and myself on drums. And our new group was Roger Limer and the Crusaders, Roger Limer being the vocalist. And one of the highlights there was being invited by Mr. Bush, who was the then manager of the Granada Theatre. He wanted to start using the group to play between the films, like a 10-minute interval on Sunday nights. So Roger Lamb and the Crusaders was the very first group to play at the Granada on Sunday night. The first week was a complete sellout, and we went down very well. We played for, say, 4 or 5 occasions, and then Mr. Bush decided to spread it round and invite all the local groups.
I was a big Joe Brown fan at the time, and I saw him either 2 or 3 times, at least twice. And Johnny Kidd himself, he was good.
When you move in right up close to me, that's when I get the shakes all over me. Quivers down the backbone, I got the shakes down the knee bone. Yeah, the tremors in the thigh bone, shaking all over.
Now, Johnny Kidd, I remember Johnny Kidd, this is a sign of the times. Johnny Kidd was on, it was very, very good. He used to get his sword out and stick it in the stage and lock about. Anyway, the drummer, he'd do a bit of a chat with the audience and say, "Hey, you know, we all have a good time, you know, all this and that." And he says, "Well, today's a big special day." He says, "Our drummer has just become the father of twins," he says, "and we're celebrating." And everybody went, "Hey!" And he says, "And you're all invited to the wedding next Saturday." And everybody went, "Ooh, we can't do things like that. Can't say anything like that. That was a gag, you see. That was terrible in those days."
The police box was on the corner of the market opposite the bottom end of Leeming Street. And on the box, it was locked, but you had a key to get in. And there was a big pole up there attached to the box, which had a light on the top, which wasn't lit all the time. So you used to do an hour on the light and an hour off the light, as we used to say. If you're on the light, you had to keep that in view. When you weren't on the light, you were basically free. Mansfield was split up into 4 beats. There was Westgate down to Church Street, that was the centre line, and then from Leeming Street up to Stocklegate, so it was split into 4. And if you're on, say, like an afternoon shift, you would be designated 2 beats, but one of them was the Granada. had the Granada in it. So when you had the hour free, you were free to wander wherever you wanted to for an hour before you were due back to go on the light again. So as I say, very often you would go and have a look, see what was on at the Granada and think, oh, I'm going to have 10 minutes in there. So you'd go and have a look at the Granada and see what was on and think, I've not seen them before. I'm getting the backstage and see what's going off. And obviously, I smoked in those days, so you'd use that as a fag spotlight. You know, you could nip in there and have a quick fag.
What do you want if you don't want money? What do you want if you don't want gold? Say what you want and I'll give it you, darling. Wish you wanted my love, baby.
What happened was I decided to go in there and have a smoke, and Adam Faith was on, like, I don't know what song he was singing, but he was on stage singing. Saw me stood at the side of the door, walked up to me on stage. I'd took my helmet off and put it on the edge of the stage while I was having a fag, and he picked my helmet up and put it on, and then he's singing on the stage with my helmet on. And I'm thinking, oh, God, what's going off here, you know? Of course, I'm looking at my watch thinking, I've got to be going. I'm sort of 5 minutes or 10 minutes, I'm back on the light and I've got to be down there. I can't very well walk down Westgate with no helmet on and stand on the marketplace. One of the bosses will be coming down and I'm in for it. So I kept not shouting to him, but signalling to him, you know, and pointed to my watch, and I've got to go, like. And he continued dancing about on the stage, singing with my helmet on. So eventually, I think he was laughing like about it, and eventually he did give me my hat, but my helmet back. So I put that on and I hopped out the back door, a bit smartish, and went back to the marketplace.
Well, Bebop Lula, she's my baby. Bebop Lula, I don't mean my baby.
I remember Jean Vincent because them days we used to go round to the co-op on Stockwellgate. The co-op, the big co-op's still there. I think it's Beatles now, but on the ground floor was a supermarket. So we used to go and fetch a bottle of milk for our tea. And I'm walking through the foyer, and this guy comes running up when Jean Vincent, you know, on the Saturday lunchtime. He says, "Is that Jean's whiskey?" I says, "No, it's a bottle of milk for our tea." So, who was fetching Jean's whiskey? I don't know, but it weren't me.
I can't remember which show it was, but there was another one, Jean Vincent and the Blue Caps, and they were the original Blue Caps who came from America. And we'd never seen anything like it, the show. Gene was amazing. He had an iron on his leg from he had polio as a lad, so he'd got a caliper on his lower leg. And he also had a motorcycle accident, and he'd broken his ankle, I think. So when he sang, he had to stand with his leg outstretched behind him. But his microphone technique was incredible. He had the microphone up in the air. He would be able to swing this injured leg over the mic. And then when it came to the guitar solo in one of the songs, the two guitarists on the opposite sides of the stage and did the Chuck Berry duck walk across and past each other in the middle. I mean, the house went just absolutely crazy. We'd never seen anything like it.
Oh, Gene Vincent. And his black leather.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, Gene Vincent. He came on as a show, but he came on one time, and I don't know when it was, but he was in the audience.
Yes.
And there was a guy doing the, talking to the audience, the compere.
Oh, right.
He says, "Gene Vincent's in the audience." He says, and everybody, he got up and, yay, and he says, "Now, unfortunately, his visa has run out, his work permit.
Yeah.
He's not allowed to perform on any English stage anymore. He's used his time up." Everybody went, "Ooh," he says, "but he's in the audience now in the gangway." He says, "Do you think that can be classed as an English stage?" And everybody went, "No." He says, "Right." So they played Bebop, and he stood in the gangway of the auditorium and played. It was just a one-off thing. It was brilliant.
From where we were, I mean, the only thing you could hear was the sound coming from the monitor that we got just above us, giving us instructions on the follow spots, telling us what was coming up next, what particular sequence of what were coming up next. I remember the last show we had was Slim Whitman, and me and Mick Fowler was on the Big Bertha spotlight, and we was following him, and anyway, we used to swap over. One half, Mick would follow, and I'd be seen to the carbons, because the carbons were hand-fed. They weren't motor-fed, and you couldn't follow and feed the carbons at the same time. Not on that. I'm on that spot. Anyway, the second half, he went on the carbons, seen to the carbons, and I did the follow spot. And anyway, I must have started daydreaming, because Slim Whitman walked across to the right of the stage, and my spot was still in the central position where he started. Anyway, he came back and he pointed, with the spotlight where he was. Like he'd actually gone into the darkness singing.
I can remember one occasion when I was down the back of the Granada, and the Baron Knights were on, and I'd been watching them for a bit, and then probably only 10 minutes or so. And then the intermission came on. So they all piled out the back door. And if you went out the back door, there was a little stone wall about probably 4'6" high, which if you jumped over, you jumped into the yard of a pub that faced on to the bottom end of Stockwell Gate, roughly where the Halifax Bank is. And they obviously hot-footed it over there and had a quick pint in the pub before they went back on stage. And I can remember being in this back of there, I'd probably having a fag in the yard, and they'd all stood outside with a pint in their hand, and I turned around, I don't know which one I spoke to, and said, "Oi, what about me?" Next thing is they're in the pub and out comes a pint for me.
Some of them stick out more than others. I remember Alma Cogan, because she had this beautiful turquoise, crinoline, feathered dress, so because don't forget, I didn't see a lot of the shows, because we were busy working.
The last one I went to was probably in 65, which was the Hollies. By then I was 17, 18, and I was too grown up to be bothered with these screaming girls, and I was a mod. So by then, mods really didn't do things like that. We liked sort of Otis Redding and blues, American music.
On a Friday night, it didn't last long, we had wrestling. Wrestling was very good on Granada television, so I think that's where they got the idea from. The problem was the stage wasn't big enough to get the wrestling ring on, so the front two legs had to be supported in the orchestra pit and just above the Wurlitzer organ. And anyway, they managed it, and I thought, it's such a heavy ring that is, I hope it don't collapse in the shows. And they did the shows on a Friday night, and it seemed to go well, didn't it?
Yeah,
but that was short-lived, that was short-lived.
Oh, Archie, there's our music.
Yes, Mr. Migrate.
Here, Archie, being as you are, you must get very lonely.
Yes, I do, Mr. B.
I think what you need is a girlfriend.
How would we fix that?
Oh, I've got 2 or 3 good ideas.
Yeah.
Here's one. I'll take the legs from some old table. I'll take the arms from some old chair.
What?
I'll take the neck from some old bottle, and from a horse I'll take the hair. I'll take the hands and face from off the clock.
Tell me more.
And Archie, when I'm through, you'll have a lovely little lady dummy, and she'll be a friend for you.
We got married while I worked there. We had our reception in the cafe. We had 50 guests. I got change out of £25, and it was a 3-course meal, 3-course chicken lunch with port or sherry. I didn't get any benefits by working there, and the cook there made our wedding cake as well. Lovely Mrs. Brightman. There was a live show on, a 3-day live show, actually, when we got married, and it was Peter Brough and Archie Andrews. So the show would be going on at the same time. It was an afternoon wedding then. They didn't go on to the evening. We went away at 6 o'clock.
Well, I know Pat from, she lived just round the corner from me on Warsett Road in Mansfield Woodhouse, and she did start at the Granada, and our sort of love affair started from there, but I'll let Pat carry on from that.
Matt lived just round the corner from where I were in Woodhouse, and then I went to work. I started at Century when I first left school, and then there was an opening came at Granada for a Miss Candy, so I transferred over there. I had the tray on and went round with the ice creams in the intervals.
I didn't get a free ice cream offer. I had to pay same as everybody else did.
Well, I've never really forgiven them for knocking it down and building that shopping centre in its place. You know, not it's a rotten shopping centre, just they knocked down to Granada to do it, and I hated that.
Well, there was rumours going about, which there usually is, if a place is going to close, and we found out probably perhaps a month before we actually closed. We all had notification letters. Actually, Tony Sheehan, I think head office must have instructed him to issue notices, and he actually typed the notice out. But he was actually called in really to close the place down. Robert Craig, he was assigned to the Granada Rugby.
Granada theatres didn't have permanent resident organists. They rotated. One local organist was on that circuit, on the organ circuit, was John Maiden, who actually bought the organ from Granada and was hopefully wanting to install it locally. It was stored in a barn. But the other story of it, obviously working at the Granada, I knew it was coming up for sale, and I was a member of the Musicians' Union at that time, and they had a Keep Music Live fund, which was a considerable amount in those days. They were interested in putting it in this, what was then the Civic Hall, now the Palace Theatre. So I can remember Arthur Burks, the secretary at that time, approaching Mansfield District Council, but unfortunately they said it would be too much of an upheaval, and they were worried about the insurance costs to put it in. So then John bought the organ and put it into storage. It was a Wurlitzer. It was 3 manuals. It had 8 ranks. Now, ranks are the different sounds, like a trumpet, clarinet, flute. So it had 8 different sounds on it. It also had, in the earlier years, a phantom piano that was placed on the stage and had a big mirror on it so people could see from the auditorium the piano actually playing. The organ was opened in April 1936 by Harold Ramsey, who was then in charge of music for the Granada group at that time. Later on, Watson Holmes, which is probably the best known organist, took over, who later ended up at the Blackpool Tower.
I actually closed the Granada, in a way, because when I was at the Midland Hotel, a resident came in, and it turned out that he was the very last manager of the Granada, and he'd come to close it down, so to speak. And I got talking to him. He's a nice guy. And I got talking to him on the bar one night, and I said to him, Saturday morning rush, you still do those? He said, yeah. I says, you still do the sing-songs and Uncle somebody on the stage is skipping contests? And he said, oh, no, we don't do that. I says, well, you ought to, Oh, he says, I says, you're a bit of a coward, you are. You should be doing this. He says, like final weeks. He said, bet you don't do it. Well, I like a bit of a challenge. So for the last 2 Saturday mornings, I went on there and did skipping competitions and stuff for the kids on the Saturday morning rush.
Very sad, the news of the old Granada closing.
Oh, yes.
How do you feel about it?
Well, I feel very sad about it.
I expect you do.
Very deep down.
Yes.
Very
and
sad.
I'm very sad too, Ken, because, I engaged you.
Yes, all these years that we've been here entertaining people, and seeing the crowds come and go and gradually dwindle away.
Yes, it's very sad. So there you are, that's life, isn't it?
Yes, I went home when I first heard about the news, and I wrote a little poem about
You did?
Yes.
You did?
Yes.
Jolly good. I'd love to hear it.
It's called The Final Curtain.
Let's hear it, Ken. I'd like to hear it.
Bingo. Not a word we heard much in 1953. ITV was a baby. Not a bit of worry to me. Cinema queues abound. Not a seat anywhere to be found. People came from miles around. This was their favourite stamping ground. We laughed a lot, the staff and me, over a cup of tea, at all the people we had lost to the thing we call the box. They'll come back, we'll never close. This was one of our favourite pros. Cinemascope and all that guff, this surely would be enough to kill the trend that eventually would be our end. The crowds, now small in number, still come to view with some wonder the sex and violence on the screen where Lassie and Gable once were seen. Just once, twice, 3 times a year, the bigger audiences reappear. A good old-fashioned family show is the only thing to take some dough. Like Disney's Bambi, Bond's Diamonds Are, and the one about a flying car. The rumours come in thick and fast. This is something we will outlast. The news is out. It's quite a shock. Ron and I didn't beat the clock. Rose and Irene and all the girls, it's enough to straighten out their curls. The boys upstairs are in a stew. They are such a reliable crew. We're near the end. It's such a shame. The caff and everything down the drain. 40 years of cinema gone without a trace. A giant superstore put in its place. The lights are out. The poster's gone. Whatever will happen to everyone.
The place closed, and I can't remember exactly how many weeks it was, but I think it might have been 1 or perhaps 2 weeks to clear it. And I can remember helping down these stairs with the equipment.
It was something that Mansfield lost. Really, it was the really plush cinema of there weren't a cinema quite like it around. Surround sound and 4-track stereo. It was one of the things that very innovative for its time.
It had been part of your life, hadn't it?
It had, that's right. It had been part of my life. And of course, to add to all that with the stage shows, that were a real bonus. That was to meet the stars of the time.
I absolutely loved every minute of it. It was the best years of my life, working at the Granada. Absolutely the best years of my life. I often still dream about it.
I always imagine the alleyway that goes up, or used to go up the side of it. I also imagine Miss Candy that was at the side of it. The other day I stood looking. In my mind, I could split it down, like the alleyway, the shop, and then the end of where the Granada started.
When you do that, does that bring back happy memories?
Yeah. It also makes me very, very sad as well, because it was the finest cinema in town, theatre. It was the cream of the cream.